The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. My name is Julia Talbot, and I am welcoming you to the Services for Youth Witnessing or Experiencing Gender-Based Violence and Human Trafficking RFP here at the Department of Family and Support Services. Today, I'm going to be joined by Adriana Kamada, our Supervisor of Domestic Violence Services, and Yesenia Galvin, who's a project manager. Yesenia will be manning the questions box. Just to get started, we're going to do a little housekeeping. Due to the volume of participants and really just DFSS standard, everybody has been placed on mute. Please put, if you're having any technical issues, please put that in the question box so we can address that. And please submit your questions via the question box, and we will respond to the questions after going through the slides. We generally address questions at the midpoint of the presentation, where we shift from the programmatic part of the presentation to sort of a more administrative aspect about how do you make an application, and then again at the end. So all of your questions should be answered. Additionally, if you have other questions after this webinar presentation, you should be able to email or call us and ask us those questions and get a response. My number and Adriana's number are posted as the last slide, so you'll have our contact information. And yeah, please ask your questions. Those are always great. To answer a very common question, this webinar is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be posted on the DFSSU channel with a link posted on a link to the recording, and the PDF of these PowerPoint slides will be posted on the DFSS website under the alerts or funding opportunities tab associated with this particular RFP opportunity. So that being said, let's get started. And so here's our agenda for this morning. And Adriana, I think I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Thank you. Can we go back to the agenda slide? I just want to provide everybody an overview of what we're going to try to accomplish in this next hour. I want to welcome everybody to the presentation. Like Julia said, my name is Adriana Camarda. I'm a supervisor over the Division on Domestic Violence here at DFSS. Over this presentation, we plan to give you an overview of the Mayor's Office's strategic plan to address gender-based violence and human trafficking. We'll give an overview of what funding resources is making this RFP and these services possible. And then we'll go into depth for those of you that have read the RFP, or those of you who have not. We'll go into a little bit more detail about the youth services that we're seeking, what the goals and what the target populations are that we are looking for, what the program requirements we are asking for applicants to demonstrate, what performance measures we would like to capture and collect in the next 2 years of services, and the selection criteria, which are how we will score applications and look for strength and select applicants. We'll go over the RFP timeline, and then we're going to pass it on over to Julia, who can show you more technical questions on how to navigate the iSupplier system, and then we'll also do questions. But in between the youth services overview and the timeline, we will also stop for programmatic questions, so that we'll go over the question box while the presentation is still fresh in everybody's mind. Okay. So back in, I want to say the summer of 2021, the Mayor's Office of Gender-Based Violence brought together a whole lot of stakeholders. I want to say almost close to 100 to participate in a planning process that really was the bones of the gender-based violence plan that was released in the fall of 2021. There were community groups, interagency working groups, there were listening sessions, but really what we did is listen to the GB Advisory Council, where the gaps in services were, what were the most incidents happening in the communities, what communities are most impacted, what populations are really most impacted by gender-based violence in the city of Chicago. And the culmination of that plan, there were really two things. Because of that plan and the investment in American Recovery Act funds, the mayor's office was able to put a $20 million investment into gender-based violence services. For those of you that have had tabs on city services in the past, we've strictly always been intimate partner domestic violence services have been provided, but we've never provided gender-based violence services. And so it was really important, this $20 million investment, to think about what we heard from the community and the stakeholders about the services that really were needed in the community by survivors. And so these are the 5 areas of where we've decided to put funding in. And I just want to go over and give you a status on all of these 5 areas today, where DFSS is in the planning stages of these. They may be a little bit out of order. Legal services, which is in the middle there, has already begun and is starting to provide services to gender-based violence services survivors. We have 4 agencies that have been funded about $3.8 million through 2024 to provide not only family court and DV court or order of protection services, but also other types of legal remedies that impact survivors, such as immigration court, intervention with DCFS and other law enforcement, and other types of legal remedies that really impact the survivors' well-being. Another program that is launching this month as we speak and placing survivors into rapid rehousing is the Rapid Rehousing Program for Gender-Based Violence Survivors. That is a $4.2 million contract that goes through 2024 to provide up to 75 households with rental subsidy and comprehensive services. And then also gender-based violence survivors who were placed with a CHA voucher in housing, but didn't have comprehensive services to go with that to help maintain their services. We're hoping to assist 100 survivor households in that pool as well to help them maintain and keep their housing. And then on to the far left there, the Emergency Financial Cash Assistance Program for survivors. It is a one-time $1,000 payment to survivors. We are hoping to open up that application process next month and go and fund payments to survivors probably throughout the year of 2023 and provide them that assistance directly. That is a $5 million contract with the network advocating against domestic violence, but it is a cash assistance program that is all survivors of gender-based violence. Survivors are eligible to get that cash assistance. And then we come to, victim services for young people is where we are today. This RFP was released in November, and DFSS also has plans to release the prevention education RFP hopefully sometime this month. So the first thing we as a city wanted to take a look at was the expansion of the gender-based violence definition in terms of only we're providing domestic violence services, but gender-based violence incorporates a lot of things. It is harmful acts that are directed at somebody because of their gender or because of the perception of someone's perception. It's rooted in inequality and abuse of power and harmful norms, especially ethnic and community norms that perpetuate violence against women or a gender that is perceived to be weaker. It's an umbrella term. It does include domestic violence and gender-based violence, but it also includes things such as sexual assault and sexual harassment. It includes sexual exploitation and sex work or labor trafficking, as well as stalking or other types of emotional and physical abuse. For the parameters of this RFP and for the work that the city is using this investment for, DFSS has selected these 4 types of definitions to be really the focus populations for this RFP, as well as some of the other GBV initiatives and funding. We include, of course, domestic violence. Domestic violence can include an intimate partner relationship, or it could be a house mate or partner, household member who's living in a unit that is causing harm. It includes sexual assault, all types of sexual contact and behavior, including rape, fondling, and unwanted touching or non-consensual touching. It also includes forcing the survivor to perform such acts as well. Then also human trafficking. Human trafficking, we tend to correlate that with sex work or commercial sex work, and forced sexual relationships, but it also includes labor trafficking, victimization of anyone for the purpose of creating income for the abuser or the trafficker. Human trafficking is also fueled by bias-based harm, so it's not exclusively gender-based violence. So some types of labor trafficking could be not because of their gender. That's what I'm trying to say. And then stalking behavior, which includes anything that can rise to the feeling that somebody is at risk for imminent harm. It could be through social media. It could be through surveillance or following the person or tracking the person. It could be showing up at their place of work or school or home. It could also be threats against the family, property, and pet. Okay. So the purpose and the goal of this RFP was really when the DFSS was looking at its initiatives. We know that there are in our programs youth members of households that are being served but not receiving services. So what I mean to say is that the adult survivor is connected to services, but many delegates don't have the funding or the capacity, the ability to provide services to the youth who are witnessing or experiencing violence in that home. So that is really the purpose of the RFP, is to really get to reach those children, either by providing them minimal services or assessment, or all the way to clinical services. It's just the lack of access to services for their trauma. So, but really the purpose of this RFP is to close the gap by providing age-appropriate, trauma-informed, and culturally appropriate services to youth age 25 and under, who are either currently living in a household and experiencing, or the adult member is experiencing gender-based violence, or they are in their relationships experiencing gender-based violence. Like I said before, we're really targeting the youth population of age 25 and under, but probably 14 and older, or as when begin relationships or experiencing violence sort of takes hold. We acknowledge that, of course, violence happens to children under age 14, but to limit the focus of this RFP and the services that we're trying to provide, we are targeting this youth population. They have to live in Chicago, and they recently have to have witnessed or experienced gender-based violence, either in the home or at school or at work or in their interactions with their community. Priority will be given to proposals who can at least meet one or more of the following. Because these are area recovery, American Recovery Act funds, they are funds associated with communities that have been hardest hit by the COVID pandemic. Coincidentally, those communities hardest hit by the pandemic are also those communities where gender-based violence is pervasive and impacts their well-being and their ability to live in a community area that is free from violence. So there is the focus on the CCDI communities that are also listed in the RFP. We're seeking also applicants who can identify with LGBTQ populations, youth LGBTQ populations, and provide them specific services. Also young people with disabilities and or undocumented young people, or young people who live in an undocumented household. Respondents must, as program requirements require, and we provided you exactly where you can find this in the RFP, and I forgot to mention in the yellow highlight above, offer participants trauma-informed supportive services at a method or a timing that is acceptable to youth or on their schedules, and also to the member of the survivor household. They must demonstrate that the program has adequate training in gender-based violence and human trafficking to provide those services. We were also looking for ongoing training provided to employees or staff who are providing the services. We also are looking for agencies that understand the community and understand the gender-based violence that is playing out in those communities, what the community leadership structure is and the sources of violence in that community, as well as what are the barriers for youth in those particular communities. And then finally, we would like applicants to demonstrate their ability to establish a trusting relationship with the youth, to try to engage them into services, either through minimal drop-in services or other referrals. We just want to note here in terms of the program requirements that we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that Illinois has a right to a child's forensic interview that is conducted by the Chicago Children's Advocacy Center. So we are looking for agencies or applicants who are aware of this fact and work with the CCAC continuously for that population 18 and under. And then also we would like to see applicants who demonstrate that they're in compliance with all mandated reporter laws and training requirements and can communicate these rights, including the right to forensic child interviews with you. Okay, so now we're really getting into the sort of design of the programs that we're looking for. Again, Part A in the RFP really goes over the engagement and outreach plans that we would like applicants to provide or demonstrate in their applications, how they are going to receive or engage youth into their programs. We also provided some examples, but this is not an exhaustive list. We want to see that you have a demonstrated referral source from an existing program that probably serves adults with children, and those children can be referred into your program, or you have an existing outreach and engagement program, including a hotline where people can call and be referred into your program. You have an existing youth drop-in center or relationship with a youth drop-in center to receive youth for services, or you're currently receiving referrals from a court-ordered SVSE program, or you have an SVSE program and want to provide services to the youth, or you can receive referrals from CPS for those youth who are demonstrating problematic sexualized behavior in school or during school programming. And you can also, again, like we said, receive any type of referral from CPS or private schools within the city. The second part that we would like to understand is that all respondents have to, at a minimum, provide a response to youth in crisis or try to engage them into sessions. We would like for the program, or we would want the program to create emergency plans or do safety planning with the youth for themselves and potentially their household, and provide them emotional support as needed. It's a bare minimum. The third part is that we would like applicants to demonstrate what type of model or program model that will be provided in the program. And the second bullet on this screen, applicants must demonstrate at least one or more of these program types in their application. Again, you can have one or more, or you can have one or more types of these programs at different sites in your application. They are low barrier drop-in services for youth, peer-to-peer support service network or services where you have a youth providing mentoring or services to a youth, ongoing counseling or individual counseling, or counseling through some type of either therapy or art therapy, and those things, etc. Case management services, clinical mental health services for youth, counseling, case management, or a combination of those types of things for participants in an SVSE program. And if you have another that is not listed here, there is also another option for you to demonstrate in your application. During, for all of those program models that we have described, with the exception of a drop-in center, DFSS is mandating that those programs conduct an assessment of the youth to develop a service plan that goes beyond their safety planning, but identifies self-determination goals through a trauma-informed and strength-based lens, and also should provide them a voice on where those goals or services are they need or want, and indicate in the application the assessment tool that you will be using and how it will help you develop service plans and help youth attain the goals in service plans. Here we show specifically the program requirements that need to occur under the program. The RFP also divides the program activities into two sort of functions. One is administering the services or administering the funds, and another portion is coordinating the services. So we'll get into further on in the presentation about how you can partner or subcontract with one or multiple agencies to be able to provide that. But the main applicant is the coordinator of the services to ensure how those services are distributed or administered or coordinated through multiple community areas. But some of the minimum things that must occur in the program is service planning to help, like we just talked about, to identify what roles the youth has to enhance their safety, ongoing services, either through case management or goal attainment, emotional support and guidance through counseling services or referral counseling services, and like I said, referrals to provide for age-appropriate services, either for other clinical services that you don't provide or for workforce and education. Again, for drop-in centers, this is the service planning is not required. However, it can be done for those youth that come in on a regular basis. You okay there, Julia? All right. So as we talked about, on page 10 of the RFP, it talks about a community engagement outreach. DFSS is really looking to see what is your plan or what is your program's plan to conduct outreach, not only in the most impacted communities, COVID impacted communities, but also in the communities that you serve in order to engage youth and serve them in your program. We also want you to demonstrate in the application how you collaborate with or receive referrals from other gender-based violence and human trafficking community-based organizations, including providing those MOUs or linkage agreements or a list thereof, and how you, if your program is going to actually provide or conduct outreach and engagement to young people, how you will do that with the focus populations in the community areas that have been outlined in the RFP. As I said, the partnership or subcontracting in the application itself, you may partner or subcontract it with other GBV service providers. However, a partner may serve as a role to provide some of the services where an agency cannot provide directly. Let's say, for example, an applicant provides gender-based violence services of some type, but does not have a strong hold in the LGBTQ community. You may partner or subcontract with another agency that does to provide referrals or, again, slots, if you will, for youth that need those services. The organization that you partner or subcontract with must demonstrate, or you must demonstrate their experience for providing those services in the application itself. And that goes for all partners and all subcontractors that are selected. And the organization also needs to meet the basic needs for a young person beyond what you provide. So that means that if they need to be connected with benefits or healthcare, you need to be able to demonstrate that you have those resources available for the youth. So now we get a little bit more into subcontracting. We are requiring the applicant or the respondent to identify all of your partners, all your subcontractors at the time of application, by of course, demonstrating your experience and their experience in the application responses, but also you are required to put attachments at the time of application as well. Those attachments we get into a little bit more on that. They include either letters of support or other documentation. Also in the budget narrative, we would like you to identify the split cost of whether your applicant is providing all of the services or your subcontracted services and to whom. Your application will also ask to upload either job descriptions or resumes and certifications for any of the staff positions in the program that you're applying for. And like I said, we need a list of your identified partners through subcontracting or formal linkage agreements as an attachment, and letters of support from the community or proposed partners or subcontractors, if applicable. Data collection. This youth program will mirror many of the other DB programs that exist in our portfolio by either entering data into InfoNet or submitting a quarterly data through our DFSS template, which is an Excel template. We will also or may ask the youth data to be entered into InfoNet at some point in 2023 and or SurveyMonkey. And SurveyMonkey is how we collect DFSS issued evaluation services. We also are requiring this program to have a survey component or feedback component from the youth who participate in the program. And this program, or this youth services program, will also have regular cohort meetings with DFSS to determine, of course, implementation and onboarding, but also to work on performance measurement outcomes, share best practices, and help identify trends, or to help referral networks or increase referral networks amongst the cohort. The RFP on page 11 demonstrates or shows what performance measures we are looking for based on the activity that you identify in your application. So the first one shows what the performance measure will be for drop-in center programs, what the performance measure will be for any sort of case management or counseling service or clinical service that has an assessment completed. The performance measure for any plan that has service plans, as well as the next three are based on the survey or feedback component that the youth will complete for the program. What we also will collect in terms of the purpose of also this program or data collection in this program is that we recognize that these funds are limited in time. They only run through 2024. So DFSS is very interested in working with the cohort to collect data to demonstrate sustainability of the program, not only in DFSS programming and funding these youth services and expansion in the future. So we will also collect information or data about the outreach efforts to engage young people and to prevent GBV or reduce the gender-based violence that they're experiencing in their community. We'll collect data about the young people enrolled and served to demonstrate that it is a need and a gap in the city. We'll also collect the type of data, or I'm sorry, the percent of people by GBV definition. That is important also to identify the gap in services that have existed for a long time for those who are experiencing human trafficking or sexual assault. The percent of young people who have been exposed to violence, the percent of young people connected to services or not connected to services but have been engaged by your program, identified in the assessment. The percent of the youth that show progress, that this is a best practice model and does really have an impact on enhancing safety for the youth. And then the percent of youth that achieve all of their goals in the service plan. And then finally, this one is related to, again, the outreach and engagement, but the number of coordinated community response activities or trainings or workshops that are conducted by the applicants. Just a little bit more about some typical contract management and data reporting. As we mentioned, we will have cohort meetings. The cadence of the cohort meetings really depends on where we are with the work. To provide an example, in legal services, we are currently meeting monthly. Now that we've implemented the program, some programs that are implementing or are implementing and raising up quickly have been meeting either weekly or bi-weekly. We anticipate that during the implementation planning phases of this program, we'll probably be meeting maybe twice a month, and then the cadence will drop off as the program is implemented. And then also DFSS will be collecting data to, like I said, to inform the trends, to evaluate the program, and to adjust program delivery, but also to identify or collect quantitative data about this, about how impactful the services are and needed in the community, to argue for sustainability of the funding of the program. And then delegate agencies will be expected to collect, we will collect aggregate level data for those of you who have never received city funding before. For survivors of violence, we do not collect client-specific data, or we just collect aggregate data and basically on demographics, performance, and service data. So therefore, we, even in InfoNet, DFSS will not be able to go into an individual client file and pull any sort of report, just to satisfy your curiosity about what we will be collecting. And they'll be submitted to DFSS on a quarterly basis. As I mentioned before, the anticipated the funding source for this program is American Rescue Plan Act funds, which are current through December 31st of 2024. The contract period is January 1st of 2023 through December 31st of 2024. That's a 2-year period. Any funds by agencies that is not expended in the first year can be rolled over or carried over into 2024. They are not like our regular portfolio where the funds expire. Therefore, any anxiety about not being able to expend all of the funds in the first year, or if implementation does not occur immediately by January 1, can be alleviated by knowing that you can put additional funding to the 2024 year. DFSS anticipates funding only 3 to 5 programs under this RFP. That is why we are really looking for agencies who are maximizing the partnerships or subcontracting process in this RFP. Individual awards will range between $400,000 to $650,000 annually. So for 2 years, the range of funding will be probably about $800,000 to $1 million. You will receive, like I said, a 1-year budget beginning January 1st of 2023 to December 23rd, and then the renewal of another budget for 2024. Your application should submit a budget that is based on a 12-month program. This program also it was required to incur and pay expenses before you were seeking reimbursement from the city, but because this is a gender-based violence RFP, we are eligible for advanced costs through the advanced payment process for ARP funds. There is an example of the form you will be asked to complete after the contracting phase to seek and get that advanced payment. Your advanced payment will be based on your 2023 budget year. And then there's a reconciliation process that happens afterwards if you do seek that advanced payment. You'll also need to indicate whether you're seeking an advance payment in the application. Now, this part of the presentation, we'll go over the selection criteria. Selection criteria is how we break down the scoring of all applications for this program. The first, and it's broken down into 5 sections in the RFP. First section is community involvement. These are where we will ask you pointed questions about your program and how you are to conduct community involvement, engagement, and outreach for this program in these identified in these 6 sort of bullets right here. And it is worth 30 points of your 100-point application. So we are really looking for your demonstration that you have experience working with impacted youth in the community that you're proposing to serve, whether you have relevant capabilities and infrastructure to support all of the focused populations that we've discussed, and if not, how you propose to serve that population through partnerships of subcontractors, what your outreach and engagement strategy is to get referrals and youth to be accepting services in your program, and how you have your agency has a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and access into their organization and service provision, meaning does your organization look like the community it serves? The respondent also has, or the application also has to show how they collect and receive client feedback, which may or may not be the DFSS survey. It could be other components. And then the respondent or applicant has to show how the leadership of the agency also reflects the diversity of the people and the community that it serves. The second part of the selection criteria or breakdown of your scoring that is worth 35 points is the strength of your program or your proposed program. We are really looking whether your application with either directly or through subcontractors or partners demonstrates the ability to provide these services that are trauma-informed, age-appropriate, and have services that or engaged youth want to be in your program, and that are also impacted by gender-based violence in the community based on the goals that we've outlined in the RFP. Another thing that we're scoring you on is your program based on evidence-based or best practices for implementation? And the next bullet, the third bullet, are how is your recruitment and your referral plan to successfully communicate and engage youth from the focus populations into your program? And finally, what is your coordination effort with community organizations and partners look like? And are they fully ingrained in the community that you're proposing to serve? The third category is organizational capacity. This one is worth 15 points. So we're really looking to see if the applicant itself and the subcontractors have the capacity for staffing to conduct this work. Do you have adequate checks and balances in your systems and processes to expend the funds or to fiscally control the funds? And finally, do you have the capacity to quickly hire and staff up on a timely manner? The fourth component is the performance management and outcomes. This one is worth 15 points. We want you, the applicant, to demonstrate your past performance on other programs. We realize that there's such a gap in services that you may not have a youth program to measure or provide previous data on, but past performance in all of your other programs, as well as the past performance of your subcontractors, if applicable, on how you work with the youth and their focus populations, how you have relevant systems and processes to track and report performance, whether that's through InfoNet or some other database or some other tracking system, how you use the data, how your program director or management looks at this data to improve your services or practices, and finally, your experience in collecting, storing, and analyzing personal information about victims of violence and how their confidentiality and other practices preserve their sensitive information. And finally, the budget, which is worth 5 points. However, the budget also includes a budget justification question to show how you've laid out your budget mirrors what you've said you were going to do in the program, and that you have the fiscal capacity to implement this program. The evaluation process, like I said, will be laid out and scored on a 100-point criteria that we just went over. If you fail to complete any of the questions or fail to submit any of the attachments, there are built-in scoring mechanisms to deduct points for that. So be sure to answer every question and upload and attach all of the requirements, especially the budget, the letters from community organizations and partners, and other things. Other additional factors that we can consider in the selection criteria is the type of services or array, like the menu of services that you have. If you can demonstrate that you have a plenitude of services that you want and would engage. We can also consider geography based on where all community areas of the applicants are. We can also consider whether programs are serving perhaps not everyone under age 25 and under, but only serving 15 to 18 or 18 and older. We also have the ability to consider providing services in different languages and for non-speaking English households. And finally, we can also consider programs that are serving youth identified as the focus populations here, LGBTQ, persons with disabilities, or undocumented. young people, sorry. And then finally, we would like to remind you, and Julia is going to repeat this as well. Yes, applications are due on December 15th. They are due exactly at noon. It is an electronic system. Any applications that are not submitted by noon will not be accepted, nor they may be accepted in the portal itself. So please write that date and that time down, and I'll turn it over at this point to Julia.
Yeah.
Or are we going to do questions now?
Yeah, we're going to do some questions. Thank you so much, Adriana. That was great. I'm sorry if I was a little wonky there. I am working from home today, and I had a cat that decided it needed to participate more actively in this webinar.
Maybe I was going too slow or too fast for the cat.
No, I don't know. Well, what it did was it was decided it had to sit on my lap, and then it decided it needed to walk across the mouse pad, because that's how it goes. So we have received a few questions that we can start. I'd like to go over, and then or just at least kind of reiterate for the group, and then we can take more, and then I'm going to go into how do you make an application in the e-procurement system, and after that we'll have time for more questions of anything that's related to doing the RFP, excuse me, or the program model itself. So first, there was a question, are all of these areas separate grant applications that are still open? And if so, how do we find out about those grant programs? So this refers back to the second or third slide where you talked about the 5 different program areas. So I think 3 of those programs have already been RFP'd out. This one, the youth one, and then the prevention and education RFP are the only ones that are left out. Everything else has gone to contracting. Is that, you want to verify that with me? I think I got that right, Adrian.
Yes, yes. The rapid rehousing, the legal services, and the emergency financial assistance have been contracted for services. What is opening is the direct application for survivors themselves to apply for that $1,000 payment, if that's what you mean. And then this program and the prevention education are the final RFPs under these initiatives that will be open, are still open.
Another question is, can the youth also have been victims of violence themselves or only witnessed?
That is a good question. It's for both. So when we use the term impacted to say they could have witnessed it or they're experiencing it themselves directly, either in the household or in any other outside relationship or community that they experience it. So yes.
Could you share why you chose the 24 to 40, 20, the 14 to 24 age range? The question asker would have liked to see the age range begin at 10.
So we chose that range because, to be honest with you, the funding that we had allocated for these services is $4.6 million over 2 years. So we limited the scope because we anticipated that we wouldn't be able to fund as many agencies as we would have liked to have focus or break down the age groups. And so we mirrored it based on, we considered youth that would probably most likely be able to engage in services and not require consent as well, and mirrored it on the SCAN program that DFSS also administers. So that was the reason why. Now, if a program does serve somebody who is 12, they would not be counted, but the target population is 24 and under. So we would want to see your program application target the 14 to 24, but in reality, if a program does serve somebody under 12, they're not they're not deemed that.
Yeah. So you're saying I was just writing down your answer. So you said that you would consider youth that would be most able to participate in services without
obtaining consent, parental consent.
Okay. Obtaining parental or guardian consent, right? So there we go. Okay, great.
And I'd like to stress that the application needs to target the population 14 to 24.
So, somebody asks, where on the website can I find the RFP? You can find the RFP is only posted on the City of Chicago's e-procurement website. It is not posted anywhere else. Part of the City of Chicago or the DFSS sort of standard is that we actually usually only post a document in one place. So, the YouTube video is only on YouTube, and the link is only on the link to that is on the DFSS website. The RFP itself, the application, and the associated documents are all on the e-procurement website, under that particular funding opportunity. A copy of the RFP, as a standalone document, is included as the attachments to that. So you would, if you were looking for the RFP, you would only go to the e-procurement website for that. Let's see, moving on. Do services have to be provided in Chicago proper, or do clients just have to be from Chicago? For example, if the clients are over 18 and our program provides housing, can they be moved into housing that is outside of Chicago?
I think that the answer to that question is it depends. If you're doing a drop-in center, you're not going to be collecting residency data. And so if that's the program that you're applying for, then we don't collect residency community area for everyone. If the city can only serve clients that have residency in the city of Chicago. So to answer your question, if you place them in housing that's in Oak Park, let's just say, you can continue to serve them, but you cannot get credit for serving them under this program. They have to have a Chicago residency. So if you have, let's say, for example, you're providing case management case management to clients in the Austin area, and one of your clients moves into a 2-year program in Oak Park, then that client can't be served in this program.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Sure. And then, okay, can you serve clients beyond the age range of 14 to 24? So yes, as Adriana just said, you can't, the target area is 14 to 24. If you have somebody younger, you can certainly provide them services. How about somebody older?
Older than 25? No.
Okay. Is this
they would probably be better fit in an adult program.
So is this the only grant for youth? Please speak about prevention education for youth RFP. So this is a grant that focuses youth from a DV or human trafficking lens. We have other youth programs through our youth services division, some of which do prevention education, but the focus for those prevention education programs is not going to be domestic violence or human trafficking. It's going to be other things like don't join a gang or let's find a job, other kinds of activity, other kinds of opportunities. We don't have any RFPs for our youth services on the street as of today, but there will be some released in the next couple of months. And I really suggest that you check out the DFSS website. There's a youth services tab, and you can get an overview of the kind of youth programming that DFSS provides. As I said before, this particular opportunity is focused at youth who have experienced or witnessed domestic violence or human trafficking or gender-based violence.
Yeah, may I also add to that question about the prevention RFP? We can't really say too much on an RFP that has not been released, but the promise of that RFP is to fund service providers who can do outreach activities or training and awareness campaigns on prevention to all populations, regardless of age.
Okay. So can we serve a subpopulation of the age range? For example, our organization serves youth ages 18 to 24. Would we still be eligible?
Yes.
Great question. There we go.
And based on that consent issue, there are a lot of agencies that restrict 18 and over. So yes.
So here we go. This RFP seems not for grassroots organizations, but funding the same of club. How can the city create user-friendly information and engage to reach new audiences and organizations who are in need of funding?
So
That
we recognize it's very difficult or it's a barrier to apply for city funding because we are a large system. That is why we really are stressing and incorporating the subcontracting or the subpartnering to be able to have an organization that can bear the brunt of applying and coordinating services and being able to partner and provide some of the funding through subcontracts with community organizations that do not have the capacity to apply directly or to do, to manage the reporting and the reports or meetings and all of that. So we would really have been stressing the subcontracting component in all of these programs. I mean, there's not much I can do about the administrative burden of applying for city funding. We've tried through these initiatives by allowing the subcontracting and the advance payment
right.
so that it's not a reimbursement process. That is what the flexibility that we've incorporated, and we're hoping to show that it really works so that the city could consider sustaining those types of programs.
Right. And to add to Adriana's comment, although not to excuse any level of government on the topic that, on your concern, almost 85% of the money that DFSS receives to provide programming for Chicago citizens comes to us through the state or the federal government. And they also have, they are also units of government that tend to have heavy administrative burdens, heavy reporting requirements, lots of follow-up, lots of administrative activities. And so we try to not pass those things on to the best of our ability, but as part of being transparent to the citizens who ultimately are the funders of these programs often means that there are kind of heightened reporting requirements. Everybody wants to everybody who operates programs would love to, as well as us, would love to see a lessened administrative burden. But generally speaking, the general public also really loves to know how their money is being spent, and they sort of have a right to. So it's difficult thing to figure out what the balance is. So getting back to the program, could the program participants be pregnant or have their own children?
Yes, absolutely. It's just the age ranges of the target population. We acknowledge that heads of households could be anywhere 25 and under.
And then we're going back. How are you monitoring the same organizations that are not getting funding again and again? Our Black and Brown led organization can get funding and access to city funds for our work. There's been a lot of, we've done a lot of internal work around this in terms of seeing repeat applicants who are not deemed eligible for funding. I would suggest to anybody who has applied to RFPs in the city and has not received funding, you do have the ability to ask for a review, or not a review that the decision will change, but somebody will come, like myself or Adriana or people across the different departments in the city. We will meet with you and go over your application and tell you, what areas could be better. We can't always change the standards of, that are in place, but we can tell you how you can improve your own performance to become a stronger applicant. Adriana, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, we are trying to work on being more flexible, and we were giving flexibility with these advanced funds and, subcontracting, but there are procurement rules that you can't skirt around based on being the middle person with these federal and state funds, like you said, that we have to comply with.
Right. Is there any match requirement?
Awesome. There is not.
No. So lovely.
That is another way that is another thing, flexibility for smaller organizations was removing the match requirement.
Yeah. So is this the only GBV RFP?
This is, we have, like I said, completed 3 RFPs out of 5. This is the 4th one, and we anticipate the 5th and final one to be released before the end of the year.
Great. So then we all talk about, can an organization only serve 18 to 25-year-olds or 18 to 24-year-olds? I think we kind of touched on that. Are you able to, is an applicant able to apply to serve a subpopulation of youth, such as providing these services to youth experiencing homelessness?
Well, we acknowledge that, youth don't live in a vacuum, and most youth impacted by GBD are experiencing housing instability, especially if they're 18 to 24 and may not be living in a household. They may be independent, right, or out, and not living with a parent or a caregiver. So yes, we acknowledge all of these, uh, the word has escaped me, intersections, thank you, with homelessness. So yes.
Perfect.
However, the focus of this RFP are those experiencing gender-based violence, and the services are about the violence as more than connecting them to housing. We want you to connect them to housing, but it's really about the comprehensive services.
So that's all the questions that we have now. Please keep asking questions. I'm going to start going through the rest of the slides. We're going to talk about how to actually make an application in the e-procurement system and how to be successful with that. But please do keep asking your questions, putting those questions into the question box or the chat box, so that we can get these answered and get you the information that you need to make a good application, or to decide if this is a good application for your organization or a good opportunity for your organization. We certainly hope it is. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about now, for people who have gone to a DFSS webinar or have filled out an application for service to provide services, this will be going over stuff, but I always like to do the refresh. So as everybody in my department knows, my personal motto is start early, save often. I can't stress to you as a potential applicant highly, enough the benefit of starting early, saving often, and trying to submit early. Every RFP that we have that closes, I always have a couple of people who miss a deadline because they just run into glitches or administrative issues or stuff that they had not anticipated, and they literally run out of time. And we're really sad when we can't when we don't get that application in. It's one person less than one application less that we have to read, and one application, one group or organization that we potentially meet and can fund. We are unable to submit late applications under any circumstances, and so the only way we can do that is to re-release the RFP in its entirety and require everybody who had applied on time to reapply. So the likelihood of, that is how municipal or city procurement works. We are not alone in this, and so I can't stress to you, we cannot consider your application unless you get it into us. And so you really need to get it in on time, because there's no way to accept an application except through the e-procurement system. And that's kind of the end of the story. If you have never, to follow up with that, if you've never done business with the City of Chicago, please register into the iSupplier e-procurement system, and you will get an iSupplier account. And the iSupplier account is used to access e-procurement. iSupplier is a system, you will have an account on iSupplier the way you have an account on anything. It is basically up to you to manage, and you have complete control over that account. So while we can do some basic stuff about resetting, if your iSupplier account gets tangled up, you are the person, and your organization is the entity that can untangle it. It's not like we cannot go into that account and solve problems for you. We can tell you how to solve your own problems, but we can't go in and, it's not our account, it's yours. I do get a certain number of questions of like, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And it's like, well, I really wish I could go in there and help you, but I can give you instructions, but I can't actually do it for you. So please, if you don't have an iSupplier account, go in, register. If you haven't been in your iSupplier account for a while, go in and check it out. There's always all sorts of people in there that have left, new people who need to be added. Try to just, in a non-crisis mode minute, try to go in there and get that account working the way you want it to, so that when you make an application, it isn't being made harder. Our RFPs are cohesive documents, or narratives that everything sort of connects. So our narratives in our application are worth reviewing. The application questions are based on specific aspects of the narrative that we have explained that we want to know your responses to. The scope and the selection criteria also very closely align with the questions being asked. And from that selection criteria, we're going to do our evaluation instruments, which again closely align to what we're looking for in terms of answers for the questions. So if you are having an issue about what direction to go in answering a particular question, I really, really highly or strongly suggest that you refer to that RFP document, the narrative, to give you guidance on what it is that we are looking for in terms of program narratives or program points. Carefully review the selection criteria, because that is, in fact, good guidance on what we are going to be looking for. Remember, when you are in the e-procurement environment, there's a 4,000 character limit per each text box or question, and that limit includes punctuation and spaces. Each response is allotted 4,000 characters, not the whole thing. That's about 2/3 of a single spaced page. The e-procurement system, not I've heard people say that it does tell you if you've gone over, but I would not say that that has happened reliably. So I do suggest to people that they take their questions, they do their documents in a WordPerfect or a word processing software program of their choice, do the counts, and then upload it into the e-procurement system. The other thing is, once you have submitted your application to us, you won't be able to see it or access it except as a PDF. And so if you want to keep that language for subsequent thoughts or other applications, I really do suggest that you craft your answers offline and keep them somewhere where you are able to access them. You really won't, for whatever reason, e-procurement won't let you see what you've submitted, and more than one person has been awarded and then had to be like, hey, can you send me a copy of the application, because I don't really remember what I said. It's really that's never anybody wants to do. Just a pro tip, don't use the back button on your browser in e-procurement environment. Navigate through, you can get back to things by basically clicking on things that are highlighted in blue or in blue font. If you use the back button on your browser, the e-procurement will sort of stop saving stuff, and then when you go to save things, it will pretend it's working, but when you go to save it, you'll get an error message, and when you go back in, nothing will have been saved. I have been burnt this way by e-procurement many times, and I don't recommend it. In terms of working for e-procurement, if you need it, I don't see this being particularly relevant to this particular RFP, but if you needed to make more than one application, you do so by submitting each proposal under a separate, unique registered account user within your organization's iSupplier account. They can all have the same email address, but they do have to have different names. If anybody wants to talk to me about that in greater depth later, I am more than happy to. I will say, for the past probably 3 or 4 RFPs that we have had, this has been an issue that I cannot solve at 11:45 on the day that the application is due. You can submit your application in e-procurement and later amend it up until the due date of December 15th at 12 noon. And if you have not submitted in e-procurement before, or you haven't done it for a couple of years, this is a great way to practice and just get familiar with what you are going to be up against. I tell people to avoid the rush and possible mishaps by submitting early, and to plan on your submission process taking 30 to 60 minutes. And I mean that. I really tell people to try to submit the day before, to be honest with you. The RFP, we often have multiple RFPs out on the street at one time. There is the hotline, which is you can go to either via email or really you can call them at 744-4357 or 744-HELP. But the hotline, they're responding to all the RFPs out for the whole city, and so sometimes there's waits. So I just say, get your stuff queued up, get your stuff ready as early as you possibly can, so that you don't have a stressful experience in submitting. As I said before, late applications will not be accepted. And when you're talking to the hotline, people definitely give them the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes they, if you call and you get a voicemail message, leave a message. They will call you back. I promise. Same for me. If you call me and I cannot pick up the phone right then, leave a message and I will call you back within 24 hours. And ditto for an email. Like sometimes you can't get a person immediately, but that doesn't mean that we will not respond to you, because we want you to have a good experience. We want you to be set up for success with this to the degree possible. Please note that the hotline, Please note that the hotline business operates during business hours, which is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. If you email me or call, sometimes I often operate non-business hours as well, because I really want to make sure that you get a response within that 24 hours, if not, immediately. I have written enough grants to feel that pain. In terms of you don't really like talking to anybody for your technical assistance needs, I do say there's a lot of training materials online. There's the link to that. And again, the link to this webinar is going to be posted on the DFSS website, and these PowerPoint slides will also be posted up there, so you can get that training material link if you want from there, or you can just email me and I will send it to you via email, whatever works. If you are interested in more things, you want to find out what else is going on in terms of RFPs at DFSS, go to the alert section of our website, which is under the City of Chicago, I think, /DFSS. And that will, that you will find out. That is where we most reliably post all of our RFP information. We are, for a lot of very boring technical reasons, not able to keep a DFSS wide email list to tell people about this. Quite frankly, the staff turnover and many places who are our applicant pool is a little too high for us to keep track of the accurate emails. So we every once in a while we think about it, and then it never ends up being a particularly feasible idea, unfortunately. So I'm going to go through a couple of different things now. Basically, two things that we can do, you need to do in the e-procurement environment, and I want to be able to show you these screenshots and sort of walk you through it. I'm always available for this kind of stuff. Again, I can send you I can send you those screenshots as unique attachments if you email them. So there's lots of support for this. So almost every RFP that we do has an amendment, for no other reason than to upload the question and answers that we cover in the webinar, and if anybody else, in other questions that were asked outside of the webinar. So you're going to need to accept an amendment, and it's fairly straightforward, but I do like to show people, give you all the heads up that's going to happen. It's not an alarming thing. We also do amendments, if we need to change something substantive in the RFP itself. So examples of amendment, we've added groups, like a subpopulation group. We occasionally have to extend the deadline. Sometimes it's like there was a wrong phone number. So it's really, an amendment covers any kind of change that has to be either a correction or just a more information kind of thing. You're going to start by, you'll be at this sort of at these screens. So it says here, if the RFP you are interested has been amended. So in order to start an application in e-procurement, you're going to have to acknowledge and accept the amendment first. In this screen, you can see this is like the start screen for getting it to start an application. If you wanted to start just an unamended, or you've already accepted the amendment, an unamended RFP, you're going to go to this actions bar on the right-hand side and hit create quote, and then hit go. But because this has been amended, you're going to have to click. You can click on the amendment history, and when you do that, it will take you to this particular screen, which is the beginning of the acceptance and acknowledgement process. So in here, you can to review the RFP is a view-only document. You'll click on this document number here. To review the changes, you would click over here on the number 2 on the right-hand side with the review changes, that eyeglass or hourglass icon. And then to acknowledge receipt and understanding of the changes, then you're going to hit click the acknowledge amendments button. So you'll see here, and also in that middle area here, is there's an amendment description, and that's just a short little one sentence about what it is that we're doing with this amendment. So after you acknowledge the amendment, you'll go to this screen here where you accept that you have acknowledged the amendment. So you click the little tiny box saying you accept the terms and conditions of the RFQ and acknowledge the changes being made. And then you're going to click here on the upper right hand side to acknowledge the changes, at which point you will be given this screen where you confirm your acknowledgement of the changes. I don't know why anybody would hit no, but if you hit no, it just takes you back to where you were before. So you say, yes, I acknowledge on the right-hand side, and that takes you to this screen where you finally click on this checkbox on the bottom of the left-hand side rather, and that you have read and accepted the terms and conditions. And then you go to the right-hand side and click submit, or accept rather. And at that point, you have accepted the RFP, or you accepted the amendment rather, and you will be able to go on your way and start your application. If you had already started your application, the action of accepting the amendment will pull all of the information from that you'd already put in to your application into the new amended RFP, a new amended RFP application. So you will not lose work if you start something before you accept the amendment. You merely the accepting of the amendment pulls all that information forward for you, and so you can go on your merry way. The second thing I like to talk to people about is how to submit an application. As I said, I really love it when people submit a day early. Please, please, please do not leave this to the last minute, because I see somebody, pretty much every big RFP we have, it's 11:45 and people are calling because they are running into a problem that they just were not able to anticipate, for both reasons, for all sorts of reasons. So give yourself the time and space to do a good job and try to get this in early. And if that means that you have to tell a small untruth to some of your coworkers about the deadline, do it. Because I also have seen people miss their applications and they're like, well, the budget, finance didn't get me their thing. Don't tell them the deadline. Tell them the deadline's the day before. Because it's not worth doing a budget if you miss the deadline and we can't accept it. So in this case, when you are ready to submit, you're going to start by saving your draft one last time, and then you're going to click continue. When you click continue, this will inspire the e-procurement system to kind of do a big scan of your application. And usually there are some error messages that pop up as part of that, just as part of life, right? So we're going to go through the two most common error messages that people tend to see. The first one is that the RFP, you can see here the RFQ control requires you to quote on all lines. I work in e-procurement, but I'm not going to pretend that this is a particularly meaningful statement. So at this point, what they're saying is the scan, that's the control, requires that you quote on all lines, and quote is what is sort of e-procurement speak for answer. And at this point, lines, you're going to see here, right below the error message, there's a little time tab that says lines, and you're going to click on that. In DFSS requires that you upload a budget using our budget template. This is what we use to make a funding decision. This is the budget that we use that counts. This lines thing is something that gets put into play when we go to contract. And so you need to put in, it's going to request that you put something in lines, but it can be placeholder numbers. It can be real numbers. It can be placeholder numbers. We don't actually care. We're not going to look at it as part of your evaluation. So you can really kind of do whatever you want. I have been encouraging people to put in winning lottery numbers for us, but nobody has done that so far. Maybe you could be the first. So that is how you resolve the most common lines, quote on all lines issue. And then you go forward. And here's the second most common thing would be a quote value is required for the requirement first name, which in this case simply means that you did not answer the question first name. The quote value in this case is e-procurement speak for the answer, and requirements is what we call application questions, and each application question kind of has a unique name for it. So after you have gotten yourself to an error-free document, hold on, you're going to be ready to proceed and submit. And at this point, when you click on that continue button, it will put your application into this review and submit phase. And in the review and submit phase, you are going to be able to just scroll all the way down and scroll through your application. You'll be able to see all of your answers, and you should be able to check to see if they're, just verify you've answered everything. It's the answer that you wanted. It's the correct information. And then when you get all the way down to the bottom of the screen, you will see this little electronic signature box. You're going to put in your name and your title, and then you're going to click. If you click first, you get an error message saying to put in your name and your title first, even though the little box is above the name and the title, which annoys me to no end. And then on the other side of that's the left-hand side of the page. For whatever reason, I was not able to get a size of anything that anybody could read. On the right hand, you'll see this little submit button. You will put it. You can see here there's sort of an arrow over it. There's this printable view. If you hit printable view, that allows you to download a PDF copy of all of your answers. Always nice to have, suitable for framing, I'm sure. So you're going to hit the submit button, and then after you hit submit, you should get this confirmation screen. If you don't get the submittal confirmation screen, then you haven't made a successful application. So the e-procurement system will send a confirmation email within 24 hours of your submission. I do tell people to check their spam on this. A lot of e-procurement correspondence that I receive sometimes goes to my spam or junk files. And so just please check your spam. The other thing, though, is please do not hesitate to call or email me if you want confirmation prior to that email showing up. I have absolutely it is my pleasure to tell you that you have submitted, and I can see within like seconds of you hitting submit, it will show up and I can see it. So that is not a problem. I could see that we actually have some more questions that came out of while I was chatting about the fantastic e-procurement system. So I think we're going to go over to that. In the meantime, I will put up this final slide with the information for myself on how to get a hold of, Adriana, myself. You can call me for programmatic questions, but I'm going to defer to Yesenia and to Adriana on that. You don't want me answering your programmatic questions because it's, I'm not the program expert. They are. So let's see. I was looking here at just some more questions. So I think we left off on youth experiencing homelessness. So now it is, can you speak more on why the RFP only funds 4 to 6 organizations, and can you speak to the annual operational budget? So I'm not entirely sure for that question, that person who asked the question, if you meant the annual budget of the applicant or if you meant the annual budget of the program. But why are we only going with 4 to 6 4 to 6 organizations?
Yeah, let me try to give the background on that. So typically in our domestic violence programs, we receive the feedback that the funding the city provides doesn't pay for adequately for a complete program. And we're trying to put out here a complete program. So we try to make the size of the budgets not only amenable to operating the program, at least 1 to 2 staff people in the program, but also desirable for people or agencies to submit an application with partners and subcontractors, and to have enough funding to be able to subcontract a portion of the work to community-based organizations. So that was the mindset of why the annual budget for the program would be about $800,000 to $1 million, and that we would only be able to fund 4 to 6 agencies, depending on what the proposed budget would be for those programs. It was to make sure that this program had complete total program cost rolled up into the grant, and didn't leave any agency with having to scramble to find other matching resources to complete the program.
Okay. So so can some of the grant budget be applied to stabilize them with safety. I think program participants with safety and housing so that we can provide the most important services.
So we recognize that, housing and economic stability is really important to survivors who are 18 to 24 or even younger who don't have housing or are not in a household that has stable housing. However, these funds are intended to provide the comprehensive and specialized services to help enhance their safety, while an eligible cost is to provide some type of client assistance in the form of gift cards or coats or clothing or whatever they need. Rental assistance or like food assistance is not eligible in the program. So in other words, your application can include types of applicant client assistance, and you need to explain what those are, but they cannot be rental assistance or food assistance that they can get in another program.
Great. And then here's another, I think, great comment. It says, for the future, how can the city give more time for RFPs, especially if they overlap with holiday weeks? Also, this is also how the city can improve their relationship with grassroots and smaller organizations and give more time to complete these applications. 5 weeks is not enough time at all, especially when it's over the holidays. Ms. Tillett, I cannot agree with you more on this. This is an internal discussion that goes on constantly. And I can only say that I would love for anyone who feels this way to go to more directly, to your elected officials, whoever they might be, to talk about this issue.
I regret that, the timing on this RFP and the release. This RFP was originally supposed to be issued many months ago, but but we also have to acknowledge that these are ARP funds that the city is trying to get out the door as quickly as possible. So while we're delayed in getting this RFP out, we felt it was important to get out so that the contract can have 2 complete full years of program services, and that was our aim. And normal RFPs, my experience has been that 5 weeks is the city allotted time for responding to RFPs. Meanwhile, your submission date is December 15th. That means our team will be reading applications during the holiday.
Oh yeah. I have, if anything, to be honest with you, the 5 weeks is longer than we used to give. Legally, we are only required to put something out for 10 business days, which is a complete disaster of a timeline for everybody, everybody involved. And for this one, we do specifically try to schedule around things, around different groups' needs. Our applicant pool is very important to us, and their comfort is also very important to us. But every application that we receive is read and reviewed 2 or 3 times, and we have much fewer than 5 weeks to get that job done. So I don't see any more questions in the question box at this time. If you have questions, please use this time to ask them. We'll keep it open for a few more minutes. But in the meantime, I really want to thank everybody for asking such great questions and for coming to this webinar, finding out about the opportunities here that we have to offer, and for the work and commitment that you demonstrate every day to the citizens of Chicago and helping them resolve some of their issues, and in this case, some really critical issues, make or break. I can't thank you enough. For those who celebrate Thanksgiving, early Thanksgiving or happy November. I hope everybody voted yesterday. I don't know, is there anything that you want to add here, either Yesenia or Adriana?
No, I just want to thank for the really thoughtful questions, for everybody's time and participating. Again, we regret the timing of the RFP, but we felt that it was necessary to put it out as opposed to waiting until next year and shortening the program time.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think of RFPs as kind of like my paper children, and there's never a great time to have a baby. It's just when the baby comes, when you kind of figure it out. And so there might be better times, there might be worse times, but as Adriana says, it's better to get this stuff out earlier and give people more time in their contracts, since this money doesn't last forever, than to keep waiting for that perfect moment. If that is all, I'm going to conclude the RFP. Thank you for your time. Get maybe a half an hour of your day back to you. And we look forward to reading your applications. We look forward to answering any questions that you might have along the way. And that amendment will, again, the recording and the PowerPoint slides will be posted in the next couple of days to the DFSS website, which is you can find by going to the City of Chicago website, pulling down the departments list and going to the Department of Family and Support Services. And that, yeah, we look forward to just seeing what you guys do with this opportunity.